which is a small town nation in northern British Columbia, as we know, as of January the 8th of 2019, when the CGL Coastal GasLink put an injunction on our people to put a pipeline through our nation. I have been marching back and forth all over this land ever since 2019. I'm a chef by trade. That's where my hat comes from. Then on one day, when all of this happened to my nation, the tides turned, and I became one of the biggest activists for our nation, for our peoples, now for the Indigenous peoples, tout le monde, all over the world. I thank Laura DP for inviting me here today, and I'd also like to have stand with me, Sven Black, if you could come and join me, and stay here, Laura, merci beaucoup. And I want to introduce why we are here today. When I was here last, in February, standing across the street when it was Black History Month, on that day, they were in solidarity with Nico Spring's family, for he was a young 21-year-old, as we all know, and on his fate as a 20-year-old, they still do not have the situation of his demise, meaning what happened. And ever since then, for the last 4 years, I've been working tirelessly on doing a filming of systemic racism, which I now just came back from Vancouver and gathered my team, the producer, the director, and all the people who'll be working on this film, which will be global. Systemic racism, as we know, it hits every sector of what we breathe and what we do as humans today. It hits the health, it hits the judicial, the environmental racism, also the elderly, which we will not forget when the pandemic was here. In Quebec, were the hardest hit of systemic racism, to the education, to absolutely everything that we are thinking of. It took a team for me on, which is called the Research for the Front Lines. 9 of the most professional researchers to help me dig into every type of systemic racism that there is for us to work on. I have since had a meeting with the Nico Spring family, and Laura here was in touch with his sister. And sometimes it's a little hard for the families to continue on the process, which is a long process of trying to get answers for their loved ones, to finding out what has really happened to Nikos. When I met this fellow to my right, Sven has got many hats like myself. We met on that day as well, in February, on Black History Month. Since then, I've been invited to the church, the United Church on Rated Group, where this meeting was a very important meeting. It was inclusive of the police chief of Montreal, Fady, who's just become the police chief of Montreal. He was there to speak to about 30 families and listening to all their stories and showing photos of their loved ones that were all cold cases, and some of them going back to 32 years. We witnessed that day, after many families were talking, the police chief Fady got up and spoke and was wanting to say that how much he really wants to work with the Black community. We all know that's a hard task, because it all becomes with respect, and that doesn't come with an easy price. It's not like you and I are going to start talking. The dialogue should have been many years ago, 30, 60 years ago, and more. And so it's not that the trust will always be there. I get it. I am full understanding on both behalves. My role now is to possibly link to systemic racism, to the judicial system, to the policing, the most horrible police state we live in today, no matter what color you are, that it needs to be addressed. Some people, like the people behind us, we won't name his name, but he believes, going back on the Joyce Eshicon story, that he said, français anglais. I understood it, I heard it right, but it's not true. This is why we are all walking the walk. This is why we are all talking the talk, on and on, with each other in solidarity, to understanding to each other that we care for each other. We all want to live in harmony. This is what it's about. I live systemic racism. The racism that's come upon my people, which is the biggest divide ever, which brings me to, I can't even visit my own little hometown of Smithers, British Columbia, because the coastal gas lanes have made such that a horrific divide for both my family, my cousins, and everyone involved. And it is a horrible feeling walking down the town that you're not welcome that you were born in. When it leads to so many atrocities individually, while it drives us all to what we are today, we can't take it. We're going to use our voices, and we've had enough. We need to let the higher-ups know that once and for all, they got to do something with the police state, with the Black Lives Matter. Not only in Montreal, all across the land. I visited Toronto about a month ago, did some filming there, and listening to some horrific stories. It is just mind-boggling how young the people are, like Nico Spring, 21 years old. They still don't know what happened to Nico's. He was just one night helping his sister move. He was apparently supposed to walk home. That's all she knows. She doesn't know how he ended up not in jail, but in prison way out of Montreal. And she just got a mere little phone call from the hospital about her brother's demise. That's it. That's all they got. That is a horrible way to treat humans. We are human. We're not garbage. We are human. We need to be attended to, just like your fathers, Mr. Legault, Monsieur Legault. I wanted to say that while filming the Nico's family, I sat with them at the Sheen in a park and listening to the auntie and the little cousin who was 13 years old, who was his best friend. She could not even come to the camera. She was so devastated. Mother said, no, she can't talk. If she will, she'll be hospitalized. She still can't understand what happened to her best friend. I gave Laura the name of the family, and so she's going to read a message from Nico's sister, and she's going to just relate that to you. This is what we have.
Merci, Marlene. Alors, Marlene parlait de l'histoire de Nico Spring. C'est peut-être un nom que vous connaissez, malheureusement. En fait, c'est un jeune de 21 ans qui a été tué à la prison de Bordeaux la veille de Noël, en 2022. En fait, il était en détention illégale. Il n'était pas supposé être encore dans la prison au moment où il est décédé, où il a été tué. Et sa famille, comme Marlene expliquait, est encore essayé d'avoir des réponses sur ce qui s'est passé. Pas qu'il y ait aucune explication qui puisse justifier cette horreur, mais pour essayer de comprendre du moins. Et donc, Marlene m'a mis en contact avec sa sœur, Sarafina Denny, qui m'a envoyé en fait de l'information. C'est un appel à l'action pour les individus, les organismes. La famille est en train d'organiser un événement de collecte de fonds. Il y a un GoFundMe qui existe depuis décembre pour le mouvement Justice for Nikos, Justice pour Nikos. Et donc, il va y avoir un événement de collecte de fonds le 24 juin, ici à Montréal. Et la sœur demande en fait à toutes les organisations, les artistes, les individus qui veulent aider à l'organisation de cet événement-là, que ce soit en offrant des services, de la nourriture, de l'aide pour trouver une salle, des performances gratuites pour aider à faire en sorte que ce soit un événement qui puisse aider le plus possible la famille dans sa recherche de la justice. Vous pouvez rentrer en contact avec sa sœur, donc Sarafina Denny, j'ai les contacts. Vous pouvez écrire aussi aux groupes organisateurs d'aujourd'hui, puis on pourra vous mettre en contact. Sinon, pour ceux qui sont sur Instagram, j'ai son identifiant. Alors, je vous le lis. C'est @3MPRESSFINNA So, Impress Fina, mais un 3 à la place du E. Je vais dire en anglais, s'il y a des gens qui sont plus à l'aise en anglais. Marlene has kindly put me in touch with Nick's sister. Her family of Nick Spring is in the midst of organizing a fundraiser event. It's going to happen on June 24th here in Jojage, Montreal. And they are looking for community organizations, individuals, artists, business owners who want to support in organizing this event. So if you're able to offer performances, food, a space, decoration for the space, whatever it is, please reach out to Serafina Denny. We can give you the contact information. You can also find them on Instagram at ImpressFina, but a 3 instead of the first E. And please reach out. There's also QR codes somewhere in the crowd if the posters have been going around. That link to the GoFundMe for Nick's family, you can also find it by Googling GoFundMe Nick Spring. And please go support the family, it's really important.
I would like to introduce Ben and have him say a few words. He's one person who I got to meet who does work a lot with the Black community of Montreal, whether it is in the church, whether it's in the prisons, whether it is events like this. He is a solid person. And also I would, before then, like to have a moment of silence for all the names that we marched for today, for all the names and the families that are still waiting for a word for their loved ones. On a day like today, letting them know we still care. We are here, and we are here for you. For one moment, thank you. Sven? Ladies and gentlemen, Sven Pak.
First and foremost, for those of you who are listening and you keep hearing the name Nick Spring, to bring a little more light to what happened, Nick Spring was in prison. While he was in prison, it does not mean he was guilty. A lot of people go to prison and are not necessarily guilty. While in prison, he bonded out. He was supposed to be home. Hours went by. He went to find out why he was still behind bars. A process that should take about 4 hours took 24 hours. So he kept questioning the guards, asking, why am I still here? They put handcuffs on Nick Spring. They put a mask on his face. They pepper sprayed him and they beat him to death. That's what happened to Nick Spring, and they're still doing investigations to find out what happened, but that's what happened. And this is one of the reasons why we're here. Because justice in Quebec has deux poids, deux mesures. There's always a double standard. When we say the name Matthew Sheffield, mental health issue, killed by the police. When we say the name Nicholas Gibbs, another issue with mental health, killed by the police. When we say Jean-René, coming from Repentigny, another issue, mental health, killed by the police. It's too often that Black people are not getting the same treatment, whether it's in school, whether it's in the hospital, whether it's in the different system that exists here in Quebec, whether we're driving while being back. This is the reason why Joseph Christopher Luwamba won in court against Quebec when it comes to racism and racial profiling. We can do all of this marching, we can do all of this talking, and nothing will happen unless we hold all of our political officials accountable. Not just applying pressure on the street, but applying pressure where it really counts. I thank everyone for coming together, and I just want to share a few words that all of you probably know very, very well. And this is something that was said by a very wise man. This is what he said. Until the philosophy which hold one race superior and another inferior is finally and permanently discredited and abandoned Everywhere is war. Thank you very much for your time. Bob Marley.
Those are very powerful words, man. Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody again coming for out in this Laura DP and coming out in today's heat. Oh my goodness. I was in a month ago in icicles in Ontario. What happened? Suddenly it just burst. We got heat. Now we're going to complain, right? Nope, she says no. I want to thank, all the organizers for keeping up the brave fronts. It's called What Matters. And when we do that, we hit the streets, and it's the organizers who get on the phones, the social media, and in a time when it's so totally needed by the individual families and by the individual persons and grannies and aunties who really want to have someone really who cares. And Sven just posted that. His words are very strong, and it's words of action that we need, and words of action that go from what he said to social media to facing those who should be accountable. And that is the office we stand in front of. Francis Legault. Please do the honorable thing. Do your job. Do what the police chief said, that he is willing to work with the Black communities of Quebec to make sure that you set a precedence to all the country of Canada, a so-called Canada. On Geauga in Montreal, on the land we stand in front of that, I am so grateful for the Mohawk Nation for allowing me to say the words that I wish to thank all of the guardians of this land that we stand on. It's very respectful that we take toll of where we are and whose land it was way before us. For it was their ancestors who lived the same atrocities. We hope for the next generation. You are all the 8th generation. You're the ones that this all worked for. I hope that in your time, it will subside. And for once and for all, systemic racism will lay to rest. That racism, we will all be one color. We will all be one, which we are. We need to live this. This is how the elders tell us. The elders want us to live in harmony, to work together, to live together, to understand your neighbor on both sides, to understand and work with your neighbor. It's a lifetime commitment. It is not really that hard. It's nice when the pandemic hit, people did look out for each other, and we still have to carry that on what it is today. I want you all to stay safe, that I just came back from the West, and the pandemic is still with us. I just did some things on a webinar this morning. 42 people in BC died of the COVID this month. It has not left us. Be very cautious and carefully. Don't get yourself hospitalized. Take your immune systems and look after it. And stay well. Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marlene. Merci beaucoup. Get some water. Did someone get her some water?